Welcome back. I'm Jacob Harris.
I'm Connor Walsh.
This is All or Nothing. We're back for another episode. Today is going to be about protein. We're going to talk about what it is, what it does, the kinds of protein that there are, and the benefits that you can experience if you decide to have fucking 300, 400 grams a day like Connor. Pretty much that's how it works. If you've ever seen a muscle and fitness video, then you will be aware of the fact that the more protein you consume, the bigger you get. That's exactly how it works.
Exactly.
Not how it works. But we're going to pretty much quickly say, first of all, this podcast is brought to you by Pet Test Australia, and anything that we say on this podcast is not advice, and we both recommend that you consult a medical professional. We're going to talk about protein to begin with. First up, it's a bunch of amino acids, isn't it, Connor?
Correct.
And there's quite a few of them. Some of them I do not know off the top of my head, so I've put them here. But we know protein does a few things in the body, but the one that we really care about is it helps us build muscle and maintain muscle. But that doesn't mean it's the most important thing that it does. Obviously, it does other really important things, but that's the one that we all associate it with, which is why we're all aware of smashing protein shakes after training. So did you want to say anything on protein specifically, Connor?
I don't know. Where do we start?
Well, talk a little bit about those other things that I mentioned in terms of what else that it does.
Well, when we digest protein, we break it down into a bunch of different amino acids, some of which we are able to produce ourselves. These are called non-essential amino acids. So our body has some way of being able to take some other substrate and then turn it into that amino acid itself. And then there's another 9 amino acids that are known as essential amino acids, which we have to consume through diet. So your body has no way of producing these amino acids itself. The only way that they get into your body is through consuming them. Obviously, in the context of muscle recovery and hypertrophy, very important for that. Just generally in well-being, our bodies are made up of a large amount of protein structures. All of our muscle tissue is protein. Well, obviously, there's glycogen and stuff inside of it. The actual contractile tissue that makes up the muscle is protein. Our skin is a form of protein. Collagen is a form of proteins, all your joints, connective tissue, etc. There's plenty of different structures within our body that are made from protein and require sufficient dietary protein intake to maintain good healthy structures and whatnot.
Yep. Great. That's exactly what I was looking for. Perfect. Well done. The main one that's, look, once again, they're all important, but the one that the guy at the supplement store is going to talk to you about is leucine, right? That's going to be the one that they're going to talk about. You should supplement with this leucine, bro, and he's going to try to talk to you about taking it and all this sort of shit. It's the muscle building one, right? It's the one where it's considered the most anabolic amino acid.
Tends to stimulate mTOR or muscle, that side of things.
That pathway.
I do believe there is a point in which it becomes either no longer stimulatory or even potentially counter beneficial. There was one point in time when BCAAs were still pretty popular, where they were initially came out in the 2:1:1 ratio, where it was 2 parts leucine to 1 part isoleucine and 1 part valine. And then pretty quickly you had people doing the contest and it was an 8:1:1 BCA, and then you see 10:1:1 BCAs where progressively it just became basically a leucine supplement with a tiny little bit of isoleucine and valine in it.
Interesting. Overpriced piss.
Pretty much. Unless potentially there may be some use cases if you are, say, vegetarian, vegan, and are consuming protein sources that are potentially a little bit lower in leucine. Maybe there's some benefit to consuming something like that alongside a plant-based protein.
It's a big maybe.
Big maybe.
All right. We can't spend too long on this. So isoleucine, you'd already mentioned. Assist with the uptake of glucose during exercise. That's a new one for me. That's a learn for me.
Not something I personally have put any weight into. I don't really think that worrying about individual amino acid intake for most people is really warranted.
Just part of the picture, though, right? Part of the
Just
overall.
part of the picture, and also I don't think consuming additional isoleucine is going to provide any meaningful blood glucose benefits. However, leucine has been known to cause some people to go mildly hyper, and that was an issue that some people did see with the highly leucine-heavy branch chain supplements. And it is also one of the reasons as to why whey protein isolate, which is quite high in leucine and branch chains in general, does seem to have a bit of an insulinogenic effect, despite being obviously generally carbohydrate-free.
Interesting. The things you know, the things you learn. I said both at the same time.
Yeah, kind of contradicted myself there because having said that, obviously there is some blood glucose interaction there around the leucine, so there could be a little bit more that I'm not aware of around some of the other amino acids and blood glucose management. It's not something that I've put a whole lot of time into.
I imagine it's fairly insignificant. Otherwise, there would be more conversation about it, I imagine.
We'll see.
We'll see. Going to stay super open-minded. Valine, another just supportive one, does say helps provide energy during prolonged exercise. Once again, I would imagine that would have more to do with your overall caloric intake before you trained.
Yeah, so any amino acid at some point, if your body's getting to the point where gluconeogenesis is what's fueling things, any amino acid can be used as fuel at some point or another if it becomes scarce enough. Obviously, it's not going to be your body's first choice of substrate to use as a fuel, but if it needs to, it definitely can.
And hopefully that's not too much of the case. I mean, obviously that's always part of the picture to some extent. There's always, we talked about this before, there's always like a small percentage of gluconeogenesis happening, right, where there is a bit of protein being converted into glucose to use as energy. But it's not ideal, right? Like in terms of like, it's not like using protein as energy or converting protein into glucose to use as energy. It's not efficient, right? You wouldn't choose, like it's going to happen, but you wouldn't, because otherwise by that standard, I'd be like, oh, well, fuck carbs. I'll just have protein and run off that energy.
Well, that is the carnivore kind of way of going about it.
The high cholesterol gang.
Yeah.
Lysine, essential for collagen formation.
Yeah. Yeah, glycine is one, also has quite an impact on central nervous system. It is a neurotransmitter. It's one that helps calm the CNS. Glycine obviously being what is attached to magnesium glycinate, one we've talked about a fair bit.
I said lysine, but glycine is here as well.
Yeah, okay, lysine. My bad.
I actually fucking didn't realize how many they were going to fucking list here. There is a lot.
There's lots. There is 9 essential, and there's about 26 total or something like that.
Yeah. Arginine, glutamine. Wow, they go on here for a bit. Proline. You probably don't want to go through all of those. That takes a long time.
Honestly, I don't have anything to say on all of them either. I'm nowhere near that educated to be able to talk on individual amino acids in depth.
Tryptophan, precursor to serotonin.
Yep, there's one. Yep, that's 5-HTP. That's a supplement a lot of people would take in order to improve serotonin production. Also, melatonin is another downstream substrate of that. 5-HTP is just 5-hydroxytryptophan. Tryptophan is naturally occurring within the diet. I believe turkey is a very good source of tryptophan. It's one of the reasons they potentially attribute like Thanksgiving dinners with an increased sense of calmness and happiness and whatnot from increased tryptophan levels from the turkey.
You must have been a lot of tryptophan in the fucking bud I smoked because I used to feel calm as shit. Yeah, that's okay. Well, look, as I said, we won't go through all of those. There's a nice little highlight reel, and there's a few others I didn't mention. But essential amino acids, as we talked about it, one of the things that we wanted to touch on was, what did I say at the beginning? What it does, what they are. There was another bit.
We're just making up as we go.
We are making up as we go, but it was all because we're leading towards something. But let's just get straight into it, all right? Connor was involved in, I don't know what you want to call it. It was a controversy. Yeah. What's the guy's name?
Coach Mundy, Elijah Mundy.
Elijah Mundy. All right, cool. So this guy and Maximus McCall had a bit of a disagreement from what I saw, and then because Max had made a video and mentioned you, right? So he'd mentioned, look at this fucking unit on 300 or 400 grams protein a day.
It was basically responding to a video that Elijah put up saying that nobody ever needs to consume more than 275 grams of protein a day. And Max just listed me as one of the examples of people who have consistently consumed more than 275 grams per day.
Right, okay. 275 sounds specific. That sounds like he's just basing off what he does.
Probably, yeah.
No one needs to do more than what I do.
I know. God forbid there be a 300-pound individual who consumes 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. That would be so stupid.
Very stupid. It's interesting, right? So I remember, we're going to talk a little bit about everything here, but I remember this being a thing with Aaron Curtis, right? Because he's like a proponent of this shit, right? Like you would see macros that he would be following and it would be like, we're talking about a dude who was like, he's been over 100 kilos, but most of the time he was just over 90 kilos and he'd be on like 335 protein, 40 fat and 70 carbs or something. And people were like, what the fuck?
Like pretty peeled year round though.
Oh, always fucking shredded, but nowhere near that big. And I remember speaking to him about it, and he'd even said that, he'd noticed that there was people generally had better physiques, which, makes sense. But a lot of it just had to do with the fact that his calories didn't have to go anywhere near as low. Like you're talking about a guy who would win, I think he won like Mr. Australia or something like that or whatever he was doing. And he was still on like just under 2,000 calories, which is like pretty crazy for a natural 80-kilo guy. I mean, some of those guys end up getting pretty low, where to still be eating such an excessive amount of food, there's obviously that benefit there. We know we've got the thermic effect with protein, so we can eat a lot more. But I guess like what the evidence of like the protein is a bit of a weird one, because it's not necessarily just the more you eat, the better. But why do you think it is that you can experience extra, like beyond 200 grams? Let's use that as a marker, because I'd say probably averagely that's what people are getting. Yep. You and me being coaches, you know how hard it is for someone to even fucking hit that. Beyond that, that kind of marker, is there really going to be that many more benefits? Obviously, you think there is.
Yeah, and I think it's always contextual. So I don't always have athletes on very high protein. It's need-based. For example, if I've got a strongman who is right at kind of where we want them to be heading into a weight cut, and we're like 3 weeks out and we just want to hold body weight there, but food's pretty low, I'm not going to have them consume a shitload of protein. I'm going to have them at absolute bare minimum protein with as much carbohydrate as possible to make up that caloric need that they've got that keeps them weight stable to help push performance. So I'm not saying that everyone should always be consuming higher protein. Now, to address the initial thing that David Mundy, or Elijah Mundy rather, that's the football player, it's much more impressive. Anyway, even if you go off 1 gram per pound, and even to some people, if you go off 0.8 grams per pound, keep in mind Max works with open strongmen at the elite level who are 150, 160, 170 kilos, some of them. Even at 0.8 gram per pound, there is still a portion of people that are going to be consuming over 275 grams of protein. So that whole statement there, no matter what way you look at it, is just retarded. Second thing I want to quickly address on this, the majority of people that are large that end up with protein intakes pretty high also end up with carbohydrate intakes that are also pretty high. I find it extremely funny how in the science-based crowd, it's no issues admitting that certain forms of protein are less bioavailable and have a less, ROI in terms of muscle protein synthesis. Generally talking, we're talking about incomplete proteins that come from carbohydrate sources. You're consuming 1,000 grams of carbohydrates, someone like myself. How much of your protein do you think is coming from the carbohydrate source? That we are very happy.
Decent portion.
Exactly. And we're very happy as science-based individuals to admit that protein is not as beneficial as protein coming from, say, a whey protein isolate or an animal source. But somehow it doesn't matter when we talk, in the context of overall protein intake. If someone is consuming more carbohydrates and they're getting more protein in as a byproduct from carbohydrate, it 100% makes sense that the total protein intake coming in gets bumped just a little bit higher to kind of offset some of the poor amino acid quality proteins that are coming in from the carbohydrate sources.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Now, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah. And there is science to support variance in bioavailabilities and quality of protein. Not even debatable. Secondly, my protein recommendations, typically between about 1.2 and 1.3 gram per pound for most people. Natural athletes tend to be a little bit lower. That's not a huge number when you put a normal body weight into it. You throw a normal 170-pound individual into that, and now all of a sudden you're eating 220, 230 grams of protein, somewhere around there. People need to take things into context of themselves. If you are not a 300-pound individual, you probably don't need to be eating 400 grams of protein or whatever it is to get you to your 1.2 grams per pound of protein. Nobody has ever told a 60-kilo twink to go and eat 300 grams of protein straight away. You may end up there, definitely, but there's a period to get there. It's not 0 to 100. You work your way up there. As body weight comes up, your protein intake is going to have to come up with it.
Yeah, it makes sense. As you said, it's contextual as well. But it's just someone taking anything out of context, right? It's like people doing what they always do in the fitness industry and sort of like going like, oh, that doesn't apply to me or people I know, so it must not work. As I said, even with Aaron, I mean, he's not even doing what you're talking about, really. It's not like he was a massive guy, but he's just found that he was doing that and then noticed some positive changes. And there has to be some at a certain point. There's going to be a threshold, and then the overall, as you put it before, like ROI or the return that you're going to get from that, maybe consuming that bit of extra protein isn't going to make a big difference when you're going further than you need to, right? Like, let's say as a 300-pound guy, okay, you're having 300 grams. Is 400 grams going to make an absolutely hugely significant difference? It's kind of hard to tell unless you were to literally do both of them for an extended period of time and sort of notice the difference between them. But even then, it would just be negligible, I imagine. It's not about trying to put that into perspective and sort of say like, oh, this would be significantly better than that. But I think having 300 grams as a 300-pound person as opposed to 200, that's a bit different and does make sense.
Yeah, and look, I do think there is a noticeable difference. There's enough of a noticeable difference that through all the people that I've coached, probably 9 or 8 out of 10 people seem to have a better response when protein is more towards that 1.2 to 1.3 grams. It's not for everyone. Digestion becomes a thing. If you've got really poor digestion and you can't deal with protein, there's no point in eating protein you can't digest. Mm-hmm. So, if someone's not dealing with a high protein intake, I'm not going to just ram it down their throat. Again, person dependent. There are other things, when food intakes get high and you have things like growth hormone in play, you have to worry about blood glucose management. Sometimes having a little bit of extra protein with meals allows blood glucose to be kept a little bit more stable. And the other argument that the natties make, and I get it.
PedTest Australia is a WA-based company providing at-home testing kits for a range of black market substances, underground or counterfeit drugs that can often contain a different substance than what they claim, or nothing at all. In 2024, 5% of oil-based steroids contained no active ingredient. Oral steroids were even worse, 12% contained no active ingredient. PedTest Australia kits provide a quick and cost-effective method of screening products before they are used. Kit results help users make informed decisions about substances they choose to take and therefore reduce the risks they are exposed to. Don't take chances with your health and gains. Test it before you take it. Go to pedtestaustralia.com to order your test kits.
Yes, steroids increase protein efficiency. It's kind of what they're supposed to do in a medical sense. Stop muscle wasting in a regular person, take a normal protein intake and make that effectively go further. Just because they do that, they do make protein intake more efficient. So in theory, you could get away with less protein. Just because it's making something more efficient doesn't also mean it can't make the top end go further as well.
This is true. I mean, yeah, and it also depends on what the training looks like, right? That's another thing. I mean, it's hard to, would it change if someone was running an extremely low volume program versus something that was extremely high volume? What's the intensity like? Is the intensity more, or what if the intensity is a little bit less? I mean, those things would really be hard to quantify, but what I mean is they would all be a part of the bigger picture that you guys are essentially painting, because none of you are just saying like, this is better than that because of this. It's none of them are straight answers. Yeah. But the problem with it is I think the people that are arguing with you are the ones that want straight answers. And I used to be like that. I used to just be like, I just want to know, is this better than this? But you just realize after a while of working with people and then doing something yourself, that it's different. Personally, I find higher protein better in terms of body composition.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Like anytime we've worked together or I've done any cuts or anything like that, when my protein, sometimes I'll notice it day to day. Just if I have a day where I went a little bit over on my protein and I did that a couple of days in a row, I feel tighter. I look better. Like, you know what I mean? I'm in a deficit anyway, so it's probably a little bit more noticeable, and there's some other body composition changes happening there. But I think it's part of the picture. Again, as I said, it may not be significant, but you and I both know, I mean, you chuck someone on a really high protein diet and give them some poverty fat and carb macros for a bit. It's pretty crazy what can happen with people's bodies. Yeah. And yeah, I just think kind of just acting as if 200 grams is just some weird, or 275, whatever the fuck it was, is just some weird sort of like general, yep, this is it. No one needs more. It's just crazy to me. I mean, what about Brian Shaw? Like, you're going to give him 275 grams? Like,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Cunt's eating 10,000 calories a day. What the fuck is he meant to do? Have 2,500 calories of fucking carbs? Like, I just don't even, yeah. It just, and he probably does have that many of carbs, but what I mean is, like, you know, what's his fat going to be? 500, 600, 700? Yeah. Like, you know, I just don't know why you would.
It's the one thing that annoys me in the fitness industry is talking in absolutes.
Yeah.
Almost nothing in the fitness industry is an absolute. And I get that people talk to a mass population, but just get your fucking language correct. Most people is not nobody. That's all. Literally, change that terminology, and I agree with you, Post.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I mean, I think that a lot. Your average person doesn't need more than Your average person doesn't even really need double body weight protein. Most people could just eat, 150 grams a day if they're like a normal sized person, and like, that's better than most of the population now anyway. Like, that's a ballpark random number, but my point is like, if you're eating 150 grams and you're an average person, which is, say, like, I don't know, let's say an average person is like 180 pounds, 200 pounds, which is like probably not even 200 pounds. Average people, or like an average person who's just like not overweight, probably isn't 200 pounds. Like, a lot of dudes are just walking around at like 80 kilos, 75 kilos. If you're a generally healthy person, you probably only need 150, 160 grams of protein a day. You'll probably be fine on that in terms of just surviving and maintaining muscle and stuff. But once again, as soon as it comes into, you want to get bigger, you want to be a better athlete, you want to get stronger, like, it's like, well, then things start to change again. Like, I think an average person doesn't need a lot of anything. And I think that the vast majority of people, a variety is fine, but and just kind of having a really standard amount of stuff is okay. But that's where we see this other shit happening, right? Like, it's like you see like a dietitian. I've seen like the dietitian stuff before. They've recommended someone like 80 grams of protein in a day or something, and like they've given them some shitty meal plan of like a sandwich for lunch and stuff, and you're like, fucking, that's too far the other way.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, we talked about this before. If someone can have a protein shake per day, that's also not a bad idea as well, because they're going to be getting that quality whey protein, which you're not going to get anywhere else. So yeah, I think it's person dependent as well. But what about, I guess, if we were to, for the drug users, you mentioned that protein is different when you are using performance enhancing drugs. Maybe we can delve into that a little bit before we go, for those people that like to hear about that. Why is it different?
The likelihood is it's different. There's not really any studies showing that increasing protein intakes alongside steroids have increased. It's just not been studied. What we do know is that when you take steroids, your body becomes more efficient at using your dietary protein. So you could get away with less protein. So, for example, if you took a normal person who just trained a couple of times a week and they dieted and you put them on a little bit of steroids and you cut their protein in half, and then you took the other person who was not on steroids, left the protein at kind of, whatever the recommended daily intake is, you're probably going to have a pretty similar rate of muscle loss. Your body's able to deal with that lower amount of protein, be more efficient with it. And that's the argument that the natties use, that the drug users should never be on high amounts of protein because their body's more efficient. Well, when things are more efficient, you can usually also push that efficiency further to the right. Something makes power more efficiently. If a car makes power more efficiently, well, you'd rev that motherfucker a little bit higher and it makes a lot more power. I personally have dealt with enough people now and seen enough case studies, if you will, where pushing protein higher with someone who's already using drugs, keeping in mind my demographic of people, when they come to me, they're already using drugs, almost always. I'm not taking someone that's not used drugs, put them on drugs, and then making progress. I'm taking a drug user who's already using drugs, using the same, often less drugs, even though people think I'm a drug coach and I just push drugs. I can guarantee you all my clients can testify. The majority of people I work with end up using less than they did prior. I've just seen it enough times that it's ended up with a better result. I'm not going to do something that I visually see gives a worse result just because there's no studies that prove what I'm saying to be correct. There's no studies that disprove what I'm saying either in the context of a steroid-using individual.
It's also a bit of a hard study to run as well, right? There's so many variables with it. Even when they run studies now, there's been some really weird ones. This is super off track, but quickly there was one that someone had mentioned once about, I don't know if you saw this. Did you watch the Manosphere documentary?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's fucking gross, right? But it was made by, actually, I might have just totally blackballed myself with a bunch of your listeners. There might be a bunch of Manosphere bros listening right now, like, what are you, some kind of fucking, what's his name? Louis Theroux, sympathizer. Louis Theroux makes a lot of documentaries. He made a documentary. He went and spoke to about 6 or 7 alpha males, right? And they were all like, I can fuck 9 women, but then my missus needs to clean the kitchen and shut the fuck up and not try to never cheat on me. And, they just, outlooks that I don't necessarily agree with. But everyone went crazy about it, right? But one of the things that came up, I think they mentioned it in the documentary, but I know a person who mentioned it, and they did a study where basically they said, if you're with a woman, then you impregnate her, the jizz from the other dudes that she's been with has somehow been still in her. When you swallow bubble gum and it stays in there for 7 years, or that Indian guy that was when you have whey protein, it stays in your system for 20 years. That's what the jizz is doing, right? Yeah. Please, if there's any Indian bodybuilders listening to this, don't beat me up because of the accent. But it stays in your system apparently, and then your child will have likenesses physically. The DNA of your Mrs. ex-partners will somehow be mixed in with your jizz and be a part of the kid. Right. And my mate was like, there's a study. So I looked at the study, and the study is they did it on some rats in Sydney or something. It was 10 mice that they tried it on. And there was maybe something that came back about it. And so the whole reason I'm making this, putting this out there is because it just shows you how ridiculous some studies can be. Even if there's sometimes 100 people, it's still just not, sometimes those people are so different from each other, and sometimes the variables cannot be controlled. Yeah. So even with what they're trying to make a point about with this, we'd have to grab 1,000 Connors that were all locked in and give you all different protein, and you have to be all running the same drugs and have the same DNA. It's just so impossible to check. Yeah. Or we could just trial it on 10 mice. And then
anything involving steroids is almost always going to be an ethical issue. So it's just
weirdly an issue compared to the fact that we'll shove 50,000 fucking possums in a cage and just like squirt conditioner in their eyes to be like, does this hurt?
Yeah.
They're freaking out a bit. Maybe we shouldn't do this.
I'm cruelty free. I haven't used shampoo or conditioner in years.
Yeah, that's the thing. People don't know about you, Connor. You're cruelty free. That's why you don't have hair, right? You thought about the animals and you were just myself. Like, I love that. There we go. But it's a really important point to make. And this whole little controversy with this guy was funny because, I mean, ultimately, I think people he's got a bunch of TikTok fans, right? So the people that follow him anyway, brain rot. Yeah. But look, an important thing to remember, as you said, many different variables, all comes down to the person. And I think that rather than trying to follow studies or do whatever it is, you're going to hear the same thing from Connor, from me, from anyone who knows what they're talking about. And it's never going to be the answer that you want because none of the clients like it when you tell them. Just going to find out what works for you, man. Yeah. And if you try something and you get a good result doing it, it doesn't mean you should never be open to anything else. I will preface it with that because obviously we've got these guys who are like 45 in the gym and they think doing really, really heavy swinging one-arm lat pull-downs on the hammer strength machine and completely avoiding the chest support provided is the only way to build muscle. Yeah. But ideally, if you are experiencing something and it's getting good results, then ultimately it doesn't really matter what some fucking random cunt on TikTok says.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it. You got anything else, Connor?
Maybe quickly just touch on whey protein isolate and contextually why for some people it's the best protein source in the world and for others it may not be quite as good.
Cool. I currently have some bulk nutrients one, which I'm going to mention. Anybody who's listening to this might know bulk nutrients at one point used to be even cheaper, but at one point I was buying it for $42 a kilo. It is now $78 a kilo. And that's no shade against bulk nutrients. It's all protein, but I just want to say I was really upset by that. It was very expensive.
And if you are an ex or current bulk nutrients customer, Amino's is relatively similarly priced now and tastes significantly better. A-Walsh will get you 5 or 10% off. As long as you spend over $100 though.
Well, with the price of protein, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I isolate. I do that because I didn't realize for a long time that it was concentrate that was fucking me up. For whatever reason, a certain blend doesn't fuck me up in the pre-mades. But isolate I just literally have no problem with. I did the vegan ones for ages because they didn't fuck me up either. But a less efficient protein, obviously being pea protein or whatever it is, it doesn't taste as good. But isolate, if I have it in a smoothie, I use some of the fit milk. I have no real issues or whatever. So isolate is, you mentioned isolate specifically, more efficient than concentrate. Is that why you chose it or?
Well, whey isolate was the benchmark in terms of protein bioavailability. It's number one. It's as high as you get.
And it's just a blend anyway, right? Everything has a little bit of concentrate in it still.
No, so you can get a whey protein isolate by itself. How they basically determine whether it's a concentrate or an isolate is the degree of refinement that it's undergone. Like when you buy, say, bulk nutrients whey protein isolate, that all of the protein that is in that has undergone a degree of refinement sufficient for it to be classed an isolate. But you can buy blends of proteins which will contain a given amount of the whey isolate, and then they might contain another amount of a whey protein concentrate, and then there might be a milk protein concentrate.
Like a matrix.
The matrix. So you're effectively putting a small amount of something expensive and then mixing it with a bunch of cheaper stuff to lower the cost of the product.
It's like buying cocaine here versus Colombia. Colombia's isolate.
That's it. Yeah.
Here is everything mixed together.
Yeah. It's right.
Bit of meth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, when we talk purely about protein, whey protein is number one. There is no other protein source that, as far as your body is concerned, that you're going to get as much bang for buck for. So gram for gram, whey protein isolate is the most protein your body's going to get out of a gram protein. Now, where the main drawback around this becomes is it's relatively nutritionally void. There's not a whole lot of micronutrition that is accompanied with a whey protein isolate because it is so highly refined. So in the context of most people, I don't suggest there being a whole lot of whey protein isolate in the diet, purely because when you do consume whole meat proteins, for example, like chicken, turkey, beef, You are getting a lot of micronutrient content in through these. They're generally pretty rich in stuff like potassium. You're going to get your heme ions from your red meats and even your white meats and stuff as well.
B12.
B vitamins, B12, all of that stuff. So for someone who is really, for most people, unless you are quite nutritionally advanced, sticking with predominantly whole proteins and meat source proteins is going to be the way to go, because you do basically safeguard yourself against making sure you're covering a lot of these micronutritional areas that you could otherwise miss if you were using whey protein for the majority of your protein meals. However, where whey protein isolate becomes very advantageous when you have a very high level of nutritional understanding, and particularly when your calories are a little bit higher, so it's a little bit more easy, I guess, to get to nutritional intakes. The whey protein isolate is as lean pretty much as you're going to get. So saturated fat that comes along with the protein, even if you are consuming otherwise relatively lean meat sources, if you're consuming, say, 250 grams of protein a day, there's going to be 20 to 25 grams of saturated fat there. If you consume, predominantly whey isolate, and then maybe some of your other meals, there's some yogurt and some prawns, like I can keep my saturated fat intakes even at over 300 grams of protein, like if I'm really trying, under 10 grams a day. Some of the benefits around this are, I typically, particularly when carbohydrates are being pushed high on training days, I like to keep fat intakes lower. There are health benefits, particularly around maintaining fat ratios and making sure that saturated fat intake is not excessive. That monounsaturated fat intake is somewhere about twice the amount of your saturated fat intake, and polyunsaturated fat intake is about the same as your saturated fat intake. If you are consuming 25 grams of saturated fat, in order to roughly maintain that ratio, that means you're then going to have to consume 50 grams of monounsaturated fat and another 25 grams of polyunsaturated fat. You're now at 100 grams of fat at bare minimum to maintain that fat ratio. If you use your whey protein isolates and your exceptionally lean protein sources, and you're able to keep that, let's just even be generous at, say, 12 grams. Now, all of a sudden, you only have to consume 24 grams of monounsaturated fat. So what's that? 36 grams of fat total. And then another 12 grams of polyunsaturated fat to maintain that ratio, putting it at 48 grams total. So now I have been able to maintain the exact same fat ratio intake with half the amount of total fat by reducing the saturated fat intake that is accompanying my protein intake for the day. I have enough calories, and some of my athletes that I work with that have enough of a caloric intake, along with the nutritional understanding of how to fill those gaps elsewhere. I have no problems from my carbohydrate sources, my vegetables, my fruit, etc., being able to fill in my bases micronutritionally. I have one, maybe two meat meals a day. Almost all of my other meals are either yogurt or whey isolate-based meals. I do also like to use prawns or a red meat meal for my red meat meal. Prawns are exceptionally lean as well. They provide a small amount of omega-3 with the very small amount of fat that they contain. So yeah, that's one of the reasons as to why contextually whey isolates can honestly be a heavy feature in a diet for some people, and it actually be a better overall outcome. For some people who are lower, for example, if I'm dieting, I'm not going to be consuming all my meals from whey protein isolate. I'm going to have less calories coming in, less opportunity to cover my micronutritional bases. I'm going to opt for something that's a little bit more micronutritionally rich, like a chicken breast or something of that nature, or kangaroo.
Or some turkey and get some tryptophan.
Turkey, yeah, exactly.
The other thing I'll mention is, just so everybody's aware, you won't be able to hear, if you listen really quietly, you can just hear in the distance, smallest violin playing for Connor, because when Connor cuts, he cuts on only 4,000 calories. Yeah. And that is enough to...
That's about as low as it gets.
It's about as low as it gets, is 4,000 calories, which could only feed 10 African families for a week. It's a really rough, right? So you just want everyone to consider that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Great for
and I'm assuming by that point, he's only shitting like 3 times a day compared to 10, which is also pretty rough, So it's a hard one in the way I think about it, And our thoughts are with you, Connor. Thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it.
But I completely agree with you. And my diet is very varied at the moment because I'm not. I'm eating more than I should. But there is just so many every meal is like I have my big kefir meal with my fruit, then it's my eggs and my avocado, then I have whatever meal that I have, then I'll have one for dinner. It's like there's so much going on that I'll just have one isolate every single day. Generally try to do it around training because it means after training I can have some liquid and I don't have to eat anything. But as you said, yeah, look, if someone's on 1,500 calories a day, things might be a little bit different. And ultimately, if you can just eat it, then that's generally good. But yeah, man, that was a good one to cover, and that was a great point to make at the end. So I think we're going to wrap it up for that one, and we will talk about protein in the future amongst other areas. But that's going to conclude this one for today. Who gives a fuck what's his TikTok Mundy, that motherfucker said? Yeah. Do your own thing, and that's it. I'm Jacob Harris.
I'm Connor Walsh.
This has been All or Nothing. We'll see you in the next one. Eat your fucking protein.
That's it.